Hello, my name is Datta and in today's lecture I'll talk about ISLM model. First we need to understand what is ISLM model is all about. It is a general equilibrium model where IS, which is the good market, is equated with LM, which is money market. So here money market that of with good market come together and intersect each other to give us a general equilibrium level of income and employment. Now first we will look into how IS curve is formed, what is the equation of IS curve, how do we draw the IS curve and why it is negatively sloped and so far. And here as well in LM curve we will discuss the same. So first we will start with IS curve. First we need to know IS curve is good market equilibrium. What is good market equilibrium? Let us talk about a circular flow of income first in order to come to this IS curve and to have a better understanding of IS curve. So first we will start with good market equilibrium. Suppose there is only one commodity which is produced in the country and there are 1000 rupees that particular commodity cost. So let's say a household is there and a farm is there. Okay, now what does a household do? They basically buys product from farm. A household does buy product from farm in exchange of money. That is, they makes a payment for that commodity. On the other hand, the farm buys input from household as raw materials or as labor and make payment to the household as factored payments. We call it factored payments. Now, let's say there are 1000 rupees in the economy. Okay, now this 1000 rupees circulated in this way from household to farm, from farm to household. This is the basic economics which we learned in our undergrads. Now, I'll come to this IS equation from this. How this IS equation is formed? This is consumption. We already know is a part of it. Investment is a part of it. Now we'll introduce another factor, that is government. How this government picture comes into play? We'll talk about it in a minute. Now, what is government? What's its role? Government either charges tax or gives subsidies. Here in this particular example, we'll only take into account the tax variable. That is T, will denote it by capital T. That is T. And on the other hand, what else a government do? Government spends on people. That is, they invest in various projects, let's say public investment, and there are many such examples of government expenditure. So there are two things that a government do or a state does. That is government expenditure and charging tax. So when government charge tax, what does happen? The income that a household has, which we have stated as 1000, is taken away. A part of that 1000 rupees from that to government. That is, let's say the tax rate is 100 rupees or say 10%. Now 10% of 1000 is what? 100 rupees. Now from this 1000 rupees, 100 rupees is taken. So we are left with 900 rupees. So because of tax, because of charging tax, the income gets reduced. On the other hand, if government spends on various investment projects, let's say the government pays 100 rupees subsidy. So from 1000, now it becomes 1100. That is, government's expenditure has led to more investment. Now, we have two terms to define this phenomenon. Here, when income decreases, either due to tax payment or due to other savings, either due to tax payment or due to savings, cause when people save, they save a part of their income, which is 1000 rupees. So, that income gets reduced. So, it is savings and tax which reduces the income So in basic economics term, we call it leakage of income. And here also, in basic economics term, we call it injection when people either invest or government give subsidies. Now from here, we can draw IS curve. How? Say, on the left hand side, we'll denote SY, that is savings depends on income, and we'll write the component T here. Why? Because this is the leakage of income which takes place in the economy. And here on the right hand side, we'll write IR. I depends on R. How? We'll explain it in a minute. And G. Now what is G? G is basically injection. So here the leakage which is taking place in the income has to be made by injection of income. So we basically call it the IS equation. Now how R and I depends on each other? That is, when R increases, R means what? R means interest rate. Suppose in a bank, interest rate increases. What happens to investment? What is investment? First we need to understand this. Investment is, suppose I want to build a business or I want to build a farm. What I need initially? I need money to buy raw materials and labors. Then with that money, I will generate more money. Now, in the initial period, what we need? We need money. Where do we get it from? We usually take loan from bank. So, investment is nothing but this money that we need initially to start up a business. So, this money depends on interest rate because we usually take it from bank as a loan. Now, if interest rate in bank increases, then we have to pay back more on that particular loan amount. So, our demand for that loan will decrease, which actually eventually says the investment propensity that we want to invest, how much we want to invest, that will decrease. So, as R increases, the investment falls. This is why we get a negative relationship between R, which is interest rate, and investment. Now on the left hand side, we see income and savings. We can say that as income increases, we'll save more. And as income falls, we usually save less. So is savings and income, they are positively related. So we have already formed the IS equation. From here, we'll find the slope of IS curve. Slope means what? When we draw a diagram of IS curve, whether it is negatively sloped or positively sloped, in order to explain it, first we need to understand what slope is all about. What is slope? Let's run a first order differentiation on this equation. How do we do it? First, savings is differentiated with y. So we get dy here, and t is differentiated here, which is termed as dt. Investment is differentiated with respect to r, so we write dr here, and government expenditure is differentiated, so we get this as a result of first order differentiation. Now here we have to mention two things, that is dt, which is change in tax, is assumed to be constant in ISLM model, so this becomes 0, that t cannot change. And here government expenditure cannot change over the years, so g becomes also 0. So we are left with this term and this term. Now if we try to find the slope of the equation, what we usually do? the IS equation. Now we have already talked about the relationship between investment and interest rate. What's the relationship between R and I? We have already stated that it is negative. That is, when R increases, that is interest rate increases, the propensity to invest falls as consumer has to pay more. Extremely sorry, the investor has to pay more interest on investment they have taken from the bank as a loan. And here the relationship between Y and S is positive. So here we get negative term and here we get positive on the numerator and negative term on the denominator. So as a whole this becomes negative. So this is why this is the slope of IS curve, and this is why we have drawn the IS curve to be negative. Now what does it state basically? See, the relationship between Y and R is negative here. That is, when R increases, Y falls. So this is why we have drawn it to be like negative. So we are almost done with commodity market equilibrium. Now we'll come to money market equilibrium in a minute. But before going there, first we need to remember something. Today in the initial videos, I have already talked about the Keynesian proposition, which differs with the classical proposition. What are they? Let's say Keynes said investment does not usually depends on R. This is the first thing we need to understand. So this is a classical version of ISLM, that it has taken a part of classical economics version as investment depends on interest rate, which Keynes said it does not do so. Now we'll come to LM curve. We are already done with IS curve. Now we'll come to LM curve. Before going there, let me rub it off. I've drawn the LM curve on the right side, as you can see, but I'll write down the equation here on the left side of the LM curve. Now the LM equation is money demand is equals to money supply. What does it mean? LM curve basically talks about the money market equilibrium. That is how much money we consumers are demanding and how much money the central bank is willing to supply. That is, when money demand equals to money supply, we get the money market equilibrium. This is a part of ISLM, the LM part. Now let me explain when money demand is equals to money supply. In order to explain this, first we need to explain the money demand part. That we as a consumer, when do we demand money? That we demand money either for transaction, that is, suppose you want to buy a burger. You will go to the nearest restaurant and you will buy a burger. For that you need money. So you are demanding money for that consumption, for that transaction. So that is denoted by transaction demand. We say the demand for money depends on income and interest rate. Income is what? When you earn more, you have more money to consume. So your transaction demand increases as your income increases. So demand for money also increases when your income increases. And when it comes to I, what is I? I is interest rate. Now here, when we talked about classical economics, if you remember, classical economics say that money demand depends on only income. That is, they only talked about transactional demand. They did not consider the role of interest rate because they did not have considered the speculative demand that people have. This term is taken from Keynes's proposition. That is, there is another kind of demand for money which exists, that is speculative demand. What is speculative demand? Suppose the future, extremely sorry, the future is uncertain. You do not know what will happen 5 years later. So you want to hold on to some part of your money to secure and to smooth the consumption over the years. So you demand a certain money for that purpose. That is called speculative demand. That you speculate about the future, that if there is something wrong in the future, if something goes wrong, you have to have money in hand. You cannot totally depend on the income, the current income that you have. So that is called speculative demand. Now speculative demand is I. Why I and L? What is the relationship between money demand and I? That is, when the interest rate increases in the bank, what happens? When the interest rate increases, your propensity to invest falls. We have already talked about in terms of IS curve. That is, when you hold asset, interest rate is what? Interest rate is that, I'm extremely sorry, I'll come to it in a minute, but let me rewrite it as I have missed something. So the relationship between money demand and interest rate is negative. Why? When interest rate increases, your investment propensity falls, because now you have to pay more interest on the asset that you are willing to buy. So your demand for money eventually falls. So we have already demonstrated the relationship between Y and MD, which is money demand, and the relationship between I and MD, which is interest rate and money demand. Now we'll explain this with a diagram. Let us draw a diagram. On the vertical axis, as you can see, on the vertical axis, we'll take I, that is interest rate. On the horizontal axis, we'll take money demand, or say the quantity of money that consumers are willing to demand or consumers are willing to have for transaction or speculative demand. Now we'll see money demand curve is always negative, because we have already demonstrated that the relationship between money demand and interest rate is always negative. So we get a negatively sloped money demand curve. So we are done with the money demand part. Now we'll come to this part, which is money supply. We have assumed money supply to be a vertical straight line, which eventually states that the money supply is fixed by central bank. Central bank decides how much money supply to be there. So it is always fixed. So we give a bar sign here on MS. So money supply curve is vertical straight line and money demand curve is negatively sloped line. Here we get the equilibrium interest rate and the quantity of money demanded. This is the equilibrium of money demand and money supply. From here we get the LM curve. How do we draw it? Let's say there is increasing money supply. In the economy, that is, let's say this government has decided to increase the money supply in the economy. So now MS curve shifts from MS0 to MS1 and interest rate falls, as you can see, from R0 to R1. So we come from E0 equilibrium to E1 equilibrium. If you extend this line to another panel on the right hand side, if we extend this line here and this line here, we can draw, and we take the locus of this point, we can draw LM curve, which eventually states the relationship between Y and R. So LM curve is what? LM curve is the relationship between money market demand and money market supply curve. That is the intersection between money demand and money supply. So we get the equilibrium in money market by this. Now we have to explain it in a more mathematical way. How will we do it? That for that, first we have to write down the equation for LM curve, which is very simple. That is, we have already demonstrated that money supply must be equals to money demand, and money demand is nothing but the demand of money that you have for transaction purpose, which depends on, which we can write as L1Y, or the money that you demand for your speculative demand, which depends on R. Now we have already demonstrated the relationship between this and this is opposite, and the relationship between Y and L1 is positive and this is negative. So we have demonstrated, we have written the formal equation which needs to be explained in further way, or which needs to be elaborated in order to understand the slope of LM curve. Now let us differentiate this equation. Let's take the whole differentiation of this equation. It becomes dms, which we can write as dm as well, and L1 y, we differentiate L1 with respect to y, so we write dy here. Similarly, we can write this and we write dr here. Now this becomes 0. We take this part, this side, L2r dr part on the left side, that is L2r dr becomes this, that is it becomes negative as we have taken it on the left hand side. Now as I have demonstrated when I was drawing the IS curve slope, that the slope is dr, slope is dy by dr, okay, which is nothing but minus L2r by L1y. Now we have already demonstrated the relationship between L1 and y, which is positive, and the relationship between R and L2, which is negative. So this entire term becomes negative, and there is a negative sign outside the bracket, so this entire term basically becomes positive. So dy by dr, which is slope of the equation, which eventually states to be positive, which is we have found it to be positive. So the LM curve, which we can see on the right hand side of this equation, is positively sloped as it is positive. And in terms of IS curve, we had found that IS curve was negatively sloped. This is why the first order differentiation of IS curve was less than 0, and this is greater than 0. Now we have already demonstrated the LM curve, how it is formed. We have explained it mathematically, and we have formed IS curve both theoretically and mathematically. Now we will find the IS LM equation. What is IS-LM equation? As I have done earlier, on the horizontal axis we take income, and on vertical axis we take R. And IS-LM basically talks about the general equilibrium when money market and commodity market equates with each other. So for commodity market we have already found IS curve which is negatively sloped. I have already explained why IS curve is negatively sloped. Now LM curve is positively sloped. When IS curve and LM curve intersect each other at point say E, we call it the general equilibrium level of income and interest rate. So we have found the general equilibrium level of income and interest rate. Income, which can be called as output as well in a different way. So this is ISLM. So first we have to derive ISLM curve, then we have to derive IS curve or other way around, and then we have to equate these two equations to get the ISLM model. Let's say for an example, suppose it is given, the C is given as, let's say, A plus BY. Instead of this, it is written 0.25y. Let's say you have got a consumption function. It is given in a sum that C is equals to 0.25y. Now, investment is given as, let's say, 100, and government expenditure, let's say, 50. So we'll put all these value and we'll find the value of y from here. Similarly, when it comes to LM curve, let's say money, this is given like this. So we have to first find the equation of money demand, and we have to equate with money supply equation, and from here we'll also get a y. Now we have found one equation for LM curve, we have found one equation for IS curve. Make sense? Now if you equate these two y, we'll get an equilibrium y, which we'll call the ISLM equilibrium level of output and interest rate. With this, I'll end today's lecture for ISLM model. We'll continue this lecture with fiscal policy and monetary policy in the next lecture. Thank you so much.